Has anyone ever wrongfully assumed you were dumb? Story 1. I film and edit promotional videos, then post them on my company's YouTube channel. The day after I uploaded a particular run-of-the-mill video, my manager called me into his office because one of our douchebag directors, who hates our department and loves undermining me in particular, sent an email to my manager and a few higher-ups. In the email, he stated that I had messed up the promo video because there were all of these other disgusting videos attached to it. As proof, he included a screenshot of the end of the video where all of the recommended videos appeared to star scantily clad Asian women in suggestive poses. Neither he nor my manager knew how YouTube algorithms worked, and that the videos were suggested because he, or someone on his account, viewed that kind of content before. I have no idea how my manager explained this to him. Had something similar happen at my last job with customers. We had 1 or 2 customers claim that we had adult links on our website, and no one could find evidence of this when we checked. I'm 99% sure it had something to do with whatever the person had been looking at before online, and they assumed it was us. I'm not sure how the conversation went after that, but I wish I had been there. This reminds me, a female, of the time I was sharing my screen with my team, about 50 odd at the end of the meeting, where we would do a 5-minute desk stretch using a YouTube video. Yes, we were that desperate for content during lockdown. I pressed play, and the first ad that played was for a pharmaceutical cream for vaginal dryness, or something similar and equally as embarrassing. The whole ad had to play, too. No skip button. It was hilarious, but the worst thing was my team would know how algorithms work, but I wasn't even signed in on my YouTube, just opened up YouTube cold. The damage was done. I miss when the algorithm was based on the current video rather than other videos you've seen. Story 2. At work one day, I wrote a menu board for lunch specials. A couple comes in and starts chuckling behind me. The lady gives me this snide look and says, "What's a sandwich? It's spelled sandwich, honey." Ha! She wrote sand like in the desert. I just smiled and didn't even correct her. That cocky stupidity was truly a sight to behold. OMG, we were at a work Christmas party for my ex-husband's job, and there was some dumbass there making fun of another guy. He was telling us all how stupid he is because he says sandwich instead of sandwich. Everyone was just completely dumbfounded. This was probably 20 years ago, and my ex and I still bring it up whenever anyone says sandwich. This reminds me of a time in freshman science class, the teacher wrote raspberry on the board for some kind of demonstration. When I said, "I think there's a P in raspberry," one of the dicks in the class looked at me and said, "A P in raspberry? What are you, stupid?" The quiet smart girl in class comes out of nowhere. "No, he's right. It's raspberry." I'll never forget the look on his face. Last time I corrected a teacher's spelling, she gave me a low grade and said out loud in front of the whole class that I should be in a, quote, school for retards. Her words, not mine. Granted, I was a weirdo and probably deserved the bullying from classmates that was happening, but what she said aggravated it quite a bit, and when I brought a spelling dictionary for the next day, magically it turned out at the end of the school year that I had a barely passing grade in her subject. Story 3. A Dutch couple visited my workplace, tourist visitor center, and insisted that the French translation on our map was wrong. The reasoning was that Groenland shouldn't be there because it was the Dutch word for Greenland, not the French one. I told them that Groenland was also the French translation, to which they chided back, "And how would you know?" "I'm bilingual. I speak French," I informed. "Clearly not very well," they insisted, then proceeded to ask for the Wi-Fi so they could use Google Translate. Well, I gave them the Wi-Fi, and to Google Translate they went. Sure enough, Groenland. They didn't even apologize. They just said, "I guess the map is correct then," and left. Assholes. I'm going to piggyback here, as it also involves tourists from Europe. I was working in Central America at the time, and a coworker of mine was from Texas, a super down-to-earth guy. We were in a common area at a hostel, and this German couple came down and made small talk. They ask where he's from, and he replies, "Texas." They say, "Oh, Texas, we're never going to visit there. What a dumb place. That's where George W. Bush is from." To which he replies, "Yeah, like Germany, what a dumb place. I'll never visit the place that Hitler goose-stepped all over." Realizing their stupidity and arrogance, they quietly left the Commons area. I have a similar story. We were discussing math for a class with some classmates in college, in English, when a Hungarian mathematician's name came up. The guy talking about him mispronounced the name, adding, "or however it's pronounced," to the end. Me, "Close, it's pronounced correct pronunciation." Him, "Definitely not. I know a bit of Hungarian," from his girlfriend. "Definitely not said like that." Me, "I'm Hungarian." We laughed it off, so overall it was a lot more lighthearted than your story, but it was still silly to have someone who knows a couple of words correct me on my pronunciation in my native language. Story 4. Our school's schedule got revamped, which meant that one of our classes that was 2 periods long was cut in half to accommodate for all the changes. When I brought this up to the teacher I was co-teaching with, she called me an idiot and told everyone sitting in our table group that I wasn't very good at math, and everyone laughed. A few minutes later, the principal cleared up the new schedule, only for her to realize that she was wrong in the first place. Felt so good to see the look on her face when she realized she was the dumbass and not me. Well, no offense, but not all teachers are people who actually have a passion for teaching. Some just look to get a profession, maybe because they're not bright enough to study rocket science. Can only hope she doesn't screw a random kid's confidence with that behavior. Honestly though, teachers are usually made to look stupid because they are supposed to exude authority, but often administrators don't accept input from them, and frequently fail to communicate effectively about changes, etc. My first reaction was that either that teacher hadn't checked their email or the principal didn't communicate with the teachers, and that is why they were running around clarifying things. Story 5. I am an application developer in the public sector. I have made many of the computer programs where I work, such as human resources, incident reporting, and some of the case management systems. Several times I have had people try to tell me wrongly how to use an application that I made. I especially like it when they tell me I should ask the people at the company. What company would that be? I tell them that it is very flattering that they think that the software was made by an entire company instead of by me alone in my office. Ha, reminds me of the time we had a PM and his crew come in and brief our group on a migration that they were about to do. What he laid out made no sense to anyone, and I figured I'd ask a few questions to maybe help him see the error in his ways. He got all pissed off that anyone would question his wisdom and asked who the hell I thought I was. The look on his face when I said the author of the procedure and code they were using was priceless. Screw you, Greg. Reminds me of a time when I helped design new software for my ex-employer HR department. It was a 2-month project. Then I helped roll it out nationwide, which took about 6 months. Then I took a manager job at one of my local branches about a year later, when myself and my line manager were using it late one evening, and I suggested that she would be better using it in the way it was designed to be used. She completely disagrees with me. That's not how she was trained to use it, and she would email the inbox on the help desk to prove me wrong. She got an email back within 2 minutes explaining how it worked, and the person who responded left their work mobile number if they had any further questions. So she called it, and my work mobile number started ringing. The whole reason I had a mobile paid for my work was to answer questions on this software after office hours. She laughed as I showed her the developer's page on the app with my name there, and then got the paperwork from the HR filing cabinet to show her it was me who was her trainer almost 2 years ago on it. Good to see she read my CV when I applied internally for the job. Not. Story 6. When I worked as a cashier in a grocery store, people would always want to argue about their procedure. They would bring up heads of iceberg lettuce and then argue with me that they were green cabbage or vice versa. I would always just smile, avoid the product, and then charge them for what they thought it was. The best was seeing people come back later pissed that their coleslaw didn't work. The best, though, was the sweet potato versus yam argument that I would have with people several times during the week leading up to Thanksgiving. Most of what we sell in the US are sweet potatoes, though some sweet potatoes grown in one state, Louisiana, are the yam variety of the sweet potato, but people call them yams and will fight you over it, even though true yams are hard to find unless your store stocks stuff for Latin American customers. We did, but yams were rarely in stock and always more expensive than sweet potatoes. Anyway, sweet potatoes would go on sale for the holiday and people would buy lots of them. Every time I rang them up, I would get told that they were yams and that I was dumb for not knowing that. so I would avoid them and ring them up as yams for 4 times the price. When customers would want the sale price, I would kindly remind them that I had tried to give them the sale price, but they had asked me to ring them up as yams instead. You know, I knew that sweet potatoes came in a bunch of different varieties, and had always kinda assumed that yams were a type of sweet potato. Well, after falling down a wiki hole, I now know that not only are they different species, they are entirely unrelated, and their respective lineages diverged about 100 to 140 million years ago. So thank you for pushing me to unlearn that particular factoid. Story 7. Corporate trainer came to our office to provide training. I popped into the room to say hello and see if she needed help. She was having trouble setting up the projector before the session. I started trying to help, but I'm not really savvy with projectors. She was getting frustrated with me as she assumed I was the IT dude, and obviously not a very good one. We eventually got it fixed, and I offered her a coffee. She was a bit rude to me at that stage. I got her one anyway. Fast forward to the session itself, and I introduced her to the room of 40 people and thanked her for coming. She realized I was the head of the division and was the one paying for her to be there. I felt very smug at that point. Reminds me of the internship where the one group led by an entitled prick vying for an internship is constantly rude to the quiet nerdy guy. In the end, he winds up being the head of the division and boss of the guy they kept sucking up to. I have a relative who delights in doing this and uses it to her company's advantage. She's the boss of thousands of people, responsible for revenue in the billions. When she has a meeting with someone new, like a supplier or a potential hire, she makes a point of meeting people in a lounge or foyer area and asking them if they would like some tea or coffee, and then she watches how they treat her. If they assume she is the secretary or the assistant, she waits patiently until they are in the meeting and then lets it play out. The story doesn't have a happy ending if the person behaves badly. I got to play undercover boss once. My company was in the process of finalizing the acquisition of another, and I was tapped to be head manager of the new one. This part has not been made public yet. To keep my tech skills sharp and to earn extra money because I like toys and nice things, I still side hustle as a freelance technician on call. I came up through the ranks and don't mind getting dirty. New place called into the area looking for a temporary technician, and I took it. I was able to work in the trenches with my future staff for 3 whole days and observe their various natural attitudes and demeanors. Once the handover was complete and the general manager did an official walkthrough with me and introductions were formally made, there were a few red faces and jaws on the floor. Story 8. Had a friend in college who was very full of himself. One morning while eating breakfast in the cafeteria, someone said, "I wonder how bagels are made." I said, "I'm pretty sure bagels are boiled." The pompous friend then said, "What are you, stupid? Bagels aren't boiled. That's ridiculous." Someone did a quick Google search to find that bagels are in fact boiled. People seemed genuinely intrigued by this information. I thought they were baked. Story 9. Didn't necessarily make anyone look dumb, but certainly made some people feel bad. I lived in Germany for a year after high school as part of an exchange program, and there were several times when I had to make phone calls. I had to call doctors, employers, program coordinators, etc., so I got fairly used to the whole telephone garb in German. I could speak pretty fluently on the phone, but since it's not my native language, I would of course make small grammatical errors and stuff like that. This led to the unfortunate situation where people would assume I was German when on the phone because I spoke well enough, but since I kept making mistakes, I was also stupid. People were quite rude to me over the phone, assuming that was due to assumed stupidity. After revealing I was actually a foreigner, they always sounded so surprised and complimentary of my German and were much more helpful and polite afterwards. German here, whose boyfriend is Spanish. He speaks German quite well, but with a very remarkable accent. He always asked me to make phone calls for him, which I refused because I thought it would impede his progress with the language. Until I was present for a few phone calls. I was absolutely shocked at how embarrassingly rude the people were on the telephone. Slow syllable by syllable talk and that shit. Since then, I have taken over for him. I think that anyone who doesn't speak perfect German in Germany and Austria, based on my experiences of having lived in both of these countries and working there, gets a lot of assumptions made about them. I was raised in Austria, so I'm most comfortable speaking German in the Austrian dialect. I can speak standard German really well also. I've been told a lot of times that I have an accent. I feel like not speaking the language fluently is too often associated with being too dumb to do so. I mean, people are so different and everyone has walked their own individual path to get where they are. I personally find it so ignorant to make such assumptions about people based on the way they speak the language you were lucky enough to learn from the day you were born. With my job, I deal with a lot of people that don't speak German fluently, having migrant parents. I feel like I'm not as quick to look down on said people because I know there's more to it than I can make assumptions about. Hearing some coworkers complain about that, or even hearing some friends judge people for coming here but not speaking the language, is kind of a tough one for me. Story 10. I was working as a teller at a bank years ago, and a Karen was complaining about how slow and shitty my computer was. If I had been using an IBM, she'd have been out of there already. She works at IBM. They only make the best, fastest bank equipment, blah blah blah. I slowly, deliberately turned my slow, shitty IBM computer for her to look at. Not another word. I heard an old joke about IBM salesmen, and it went something like this. An old lady was married 3 times and was still a virgin. Incredulous, I asked how that was possible, and she told me that the first one was too young, the second one was too old, and the third one was an IBM salesman who just sat at the foot of the bed and told her how good it was going to be. I was the manager at a pizza place where we had a hand sanitizer by the registers for customers to use. One week, we ran out of sanitizer before the truck came, so we just left it empty. Some guy comes in and tries to use it. I'm like, sorry, we're out at the moment. He ignores me and tries a couple more times, then says, I think this is broken. I repeat what I said. He looks at me like I'm the dumbest person in the world and goes, I work for hand sanitizing company? Your mechanism is stuck. Me, well, no, I'm pretty sure it's just empty, seeing as I watched it work perfectly until it was drained. Guy then just reaches out and takes the front cover off the thing. It's completely empty. I just stare at him and hold my hand out for cover. He sheepishly gives it to me and leaves. Just because I make minimum wage doesn't mean I'm stupid. Story 11. I was a service desk technician at a hospital helping a doctor reset his password. He kept misspelling the temporary password. It was welcome12345. Turns out he thought welcome has 2 L's and freaked out at me, citing his education and my, at the time, lack thereof as evidence that he was right. After going back and forth, he got frustrated and handed me off to his nurse and left. She got it on the first try and then apologized to me for her boss's behavior. The funniest part was, as she was hanging up, I heard her talking to another nurse, saying, yeah, Dr. Dumbass couldn't spell welcome again. I had a similar issue once. I set her a temp password of password 2019, and after several failed attempts, I thought she might be having trouble getting password out with no typos, so I made it easier, something like temp 1234, and she still had issues. Turns out she was typing password TWOZEROONENE and temp ONETWOTHREEFOUR. Now, when I give a password out to them, it goes uppercase T as in tango, lowercase e as in echo, lowercase m as in Mike, lowercase p as in papa, the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, the number 4, which is a pain because our temp passwords are quite a bit longer than temp1234, but totally worth it to avoid these problems. Too bad it barely helps. As an IT guy who has worked in healthcare all of my career, my experience is doctors cannot use passwords. They can't remember them, they can't type them in. Oh, and of course, many of them are too important to be bothered with them. Maybe they have too much important medical shit going on in their heads that drives out all knowledge of passwords from their brains. My specialty is Active Directory, so I would get tickets escalated to me because the password was reset but still didn't work. They swear there must be something wrong with all of AD. I reset the password to a generic password like password 1 and had the doctor try it. Nope, it doesn't work. I then do it and show him it works for me, which usually shuts them up. Story 12. When I was in the 8th grade, we'd just learned about the seasons and Earth's rotation and all that. To my surprise, my teacher taught us that the Earth is actually closest to the sun during winter, but it's cold because of the tilt on the axis, not because of proximity to the sun. The tilt determines the seasons. And then soon after that, I went to math class and my math teacher said something about how it was freezing because we were so far from the sun. And of course, I piped up to tell him he was wrong, according to what Mr. Science teacher had just taught us. My math teacher went off, ripping into me so hard in front of the class. It was lighthearted. He was known for being funny and making fun of kids all the time. He and I were going back and forth for a while, and I specifically remember him saying, "Oh yeah, 'cause when I'm cold, I move away from the fire. Yeah, that makes perfect sense." And I kept arguing, no, it's because of the Earth's tilt. And so finally he Googled it and I was right. He at least gave me credit and admitted he was wrong after that. This reminds me of when I was in the 8th grade. We had the 17-year-old cicadas making an appearance where I live, and I was explaining to my science teacher how I had tons of seagulls by my house eating the cicadas. She proceeded to tell me over and over that we do not have seagulls in our area because we do not live by a body of water. Lake Michigan was 45 minutes away. I said, well, I definitely have seagulls in my yard eating cicadas. A week or so later, she comes back with a newspaper with a big picture of seagulls on it. They were hanging out in the suburbs to eat the cicadas. She admitted that she was wrong, but like my entire life, cicadas or not, we had seagulls in parking lots. So this lady must not have been from around here. We just had more because of the cicadas. This reminded me of when I was in primary school. My dad had told me how an Olympic swimmer, Duncan Goodhue, had fallen out of a tree and the trauma from the fall caused him to lose all his hair. Well, I go into my primary 3 class and tell this to them, and the teacher is insistent that it's untrue and physically impossible. What can I say? I'm only 8 years old, so I shut up. Guess who my primary 6 teacher is? And lo and behold, in one of our classes, she tells us how a swimmer fell out of a tree, causing him to be hairless. Of course, she doesn't credit me with the story, and I sit there seething. Story 13. My wife and I were traveling with a couple we worked with in South Korea. We weren't best friends with them, but they were nice enough, so we rented a car and traveled around the island of Jeju. Now, this is a small island and you could drive around it in 4 or 5 hours, but we were taking our time seeing the sights. The guy was a bit of a know-it-all, but they had been in Korea 6 months longer than us, so I always took his advice. Anyways, I'm driving the car and we are trying to find the place that we want to eat at. I say something like, "We are going the right way." This guy responds with, "No, we are going south. Trust me, I majored in geography." I look straight ahead into the setting sun and respond with, "Weird. We found the one place on Earth where the sun sets in the south." Well, that shut him up for a while. I have this with my wife all the time. She thinks I'm full of shit when we're out and she asks me which way is north, east, etc. And I answer straight away because she thinks you can't possibly just know without looking at a compass. I've tried to explain multiple times that I'm not magic. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. If you ask me at 9 a.m., I just look towards the sun and say east is in that general direction. I've also said I can't do it so easily at midday as the sun is directly above us, but in the mornings and evenings it's fairly simple. She still thinks I'm playing tricks as I look at a compass on my phone every 2 minutes in case she asks. Also, it helps that I'm a truck driver and have driven just about everywhere in my tiny country, so I pretty much know which direction I'm driving on any given road. I was driving home from a convention with my husband and his know-it-all has to be right all the time friend. They were both tipsy and were talking about something in French. I piped into something they were talking about by saying merci. A friend insists it means hello. We get into a back and forth about it. I make sure he knows I actually took 4 years of French in high school and have been to France, so I might know a little more than him. And I finally ask my husband, who grew up in a country where French was an official language, though not predominantly spoken in his area, how to say hello in French, just to get friend to shut up. And my husband says, merci. I went quiet because I really didn't want to embarrass my husband in front of his friend. That just felt weird, until his friend leans forward and says with a smug smile on his face, that means hello. I just say in a clipped voice, I'm sorry, but that's wrong. There was a moment of silence before my husband said in a voice of realization, bonjour. Friend was quiet for a good long while after that. Story 14. I had a paper returned to me this morning because I didn't write out all of the names of the authors in the manuscript. I took a screenshot of their submission guidelines detailing author names must be formatted with the first initial followed by last name and sent it back. Got an apology email and a submission received notification a few minutes later. Academia, I swear to God. Had a girlfriend once who had finished her PhD in the humanities whilst I was partway through mine in science. Lectured me about how I was writing a paper all wrong. Had to explain to her how the conventions in the scientific literature were very different from those in the humanities. It took her a while, but eventually she accepted that she wasn't quite the expert she thought she was. I knew a girl who had to resit her final year of law school. The school, quite a prestigious one in the UK, was so racist that despite her turn in it showing her dissertation to be at something like 4%, her original ideas were so good that they insisted there was no way that an Asian girl from Southeast Asia could write and express such a good original idea that well. In the end, due to not having any evidence of plagiarism, they agreed to not flunk her and let her retake a year. Story 15. Sister-in-law used to make fun of English all the time. Whenever I mispronounced something, she would start laughing and tell everyone, "She's so cute, she can't pronounce this or that." I always considered her just a mean girl trying to keep the attention to herself, but the English thing really bothered me. One day we were drinking and she started laughing at something I said. I lost it. I told her I speak 3 languages while she can barely speak English. We kept arguing until I said it's fine, let's prove it. We took a mock-up English test online and I got a perfect score. She got 8 out of 12. That was the last day she laughed at me. My ex would get this shit all the time. We're both Australian, but her family is Swiss, and she spent bits of her childhood and teens going back and forth between 2 countries. She has 3 extra languages under her belt, but with her heavy local Aussie accent, people think she's an idiot when she forgets an English word here and there. I try to constantly remind my kids to not make fun of foreigners speaking English differently. Those folks with an accent actually know multiple languages. How many languages do you know? Do you think you would have difficulty in Mexico even after taking Spanish 1 and 2 in high school? It takes a lot of practice and understanding to use a language correctly. Something you don't even realize is why you say certain things if it is your native tongue. Story 16. When I was in the army, I and a group of specialists were standing in a circle, taking a break in the motor pool. A lieutenant came out and said he needed a forklift driver, went around the circle, pointed at each male, and asked them if they had their license. None of them did. He huffed and walked away. He had clearly, obviously skipped over the other female and me in the circle. That was fine. We were the only 88M heavy vehicle operators and forklift licensed people there. The dudes were all paralegals and HR specialists. Everyone laughed. What an embarrassing moment for him. Reminds me a little of my aunt. She had a heavy vehicle license back in the day when it was super uncommon for a woman to have one. According to my dad, she was given several sideways looks when applying for jobs, until she passed every road test she was given with flying colors. Once, as the only woman applying for a job, I want to say it was a coach bus company, but I'm not sure. She met a hiring manager who gave her a whole spiel about not always being able to have one of the newer, easier to drive automatic buses, and assuming that's all she could do, they wouldn't be able to accommodate her only being able to drive those. She just politely told them she hadn't realized those were an option and asked to test on an old bus. She got that job. What people hadn't known was that her father owned a construction company with a bunch of big equipment and a little lot to park them at the end of the night. Instead of paying his expensive employees to mess around for 40 minutes trying to get their shit parked at the end of the night, they left it at the entrance. And it had been my aunt's job, starting at 15 or 16, to Tetris all the big rigs into the little lot ready to drive out at the next shift. There are very few types of vehicles she doesn't have experience with. Story 17. I'm currently a junior in college, and a couple of weeks ago, when the semester started dying down, I left the dorms to come back home and finish things out online. I also started working at the local grocery store as well. Around a week ago, I was checking out 2 customers when they told me they wanted to pay 50-50 with 2 cards. Our system requires us to manually enter the price, so I did, and the lovely gentleman told me my math was wrong and said he's a sophomore engineering student at a school nearby to help justify why he is correct. I responded, "Oh, cool. I'm actually a junior at insert much better engineering school. What are you studying?" While also pulling up a calculator and showing him he was wrong. Everyone always assumes the workers here are dumb, so it's always nice to show them otherwise. Yes, I worked at a pub while doing my undergraduate degree. I remember an older man coming in, and as I was counting his change, he was going on and on about how young people rely too much on technology, and you wouldn't even be able to work out my change if the till didn't tell you, would you? My response response was to laugh and say, "I wish this till was fancy enough to actually tell me the change amount. I think it was supposed to, but that feature broke way before I started working there." He ignored this and then started going on about how all these kids are studying useless subjects. Nobody knows how to do math anymore. What do you study anyway? Media, I bet. With a polite customer service smile, "Astrophysics. Can I get you anything else?" He just grumbled and wandered off with his pint. There's absolutely nothing wrong with studying media studies, obviously, but this guy clearly thought so, and was not expecting the young woman serving him to be doing anything he respected. As an aside, I had the "oh really?" response when I told people that I studied so often, that I started asking, "What did you think I do?" After graduating, I worked in cybersecurity for a bit. Only women in my department, and people would always assume I was doing some non-technical role. People who did the exact same job as me would ask what I studied, and when the above exchange inevitably took place, the answer was usually, "I don't know, business studies?" Okay, but I'm here doing the same job as you, which you know perfectly well does not even remotely relate to business studies. The rants I could have about these encounters, but I will save them for another post. I used to work at a restaurant across the street from a university in a college town. Some people were so rude to us because we were only cashiers. One woman even walked in with 2 teenagers, pointed at me and said, "This is what happens if you don't go to college." Couldn't believe how dumb people were that they couldn't put 2 and 2 together. Why so many people in their early 20s were working next to a university. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you'd like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe if you're new. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.